My name is Patty Sherrill. I'm a lieutenant with the Canton Police Department. The men and women of this agency are committed to responding to calls of domestic violence with professionalism, care, sensitivity, and understanding. Typically, calls for domestic disturbances are called in by either a neighbor or the person that's being abused. When our officers respond, we always send 2 officers. Calls for domestic violence tend to have the highest risk for our officers, so that's why we always send 2 to any call for any domestic disturbance. When the officers do respond, they actually take their time pulling up, and while they're slowly walking up to the residence or wherever the disturbance is occurring, they're looking to see if there's people outside fighting, or they actually listen to see if they can hear arguing going on. They don't just rush into those calls. They take everything in. Once we are on scene, our officers will separate the parties that are arguing, and they'll get a story from each person. They'll also look for red flags. A red flag would be something like the victim saying that he or she was never touched, yet the officer sees scratches on the face, bruising. They could see that the person may have been crying. So all those body language, signs that there might have been a struggle, such as furniture tipped over, the room being in disarray, those are all red flags for the officers. Though the person's story says that nothing happened, all these physical indicators say otherwise. So typically we will separate the 2 parties and get their story and version of what transpired. Not all calls of domestic violence end in an arrest. Sometimes just separating the parties is all that's needed to help bring calm back to the residents. But if there's been an assault, somebody touched somebody, made threats, along with those assaults, then yes, an arrest has to be made. The officers, once abuse has been reported, if the officers are there on scene, they will make available to the victim the opportunity to file for a restraining order. Also, the officers will give the victim opportunity for several other services, such as to leave the home, we'll take them to a safe place, make some phone calls for them to see if other family members can't come be with them or take them somewhere, take them to a shelter. Whatever their needs are, our officers are there to help them. If a restraining order is a viable option for that victim, the officers will sit down and explain every step of the restraining order. The victim does not have to exercise that right to have a restraining order right there on scene. Sometimes it just takes a couple of hours, let the situation settle down and things to calm down before the victim decides what their options are and that they want to go forward with the restraining order. The Canton Police Department has a domestic violence officer. That's me. My job is to act as a liaison between all services and the person being abused. If a call comes in for abuse and it's on a shift that I'm not working, I'll always follow up the next day with the victim. Whether or not the victim got a restraining order is irrelevant. I'll always make a call, reach out to the victim, and introduce myself and just talk about some services that are available. If a restraining order was not taken out, then I discuss the options that the restraining order is still available to them. It doesn't have an expiration time on it just because it wasn't taken out at the time of the incident. And I'll explain all aspects of the restraining order. We'll talk about some safety measures, some safety actions that can be taken to try to help keep the victim safe and other family members. And just talk about the court system. If the perpetrator was arrested, I'll talk about what to expect from the court end. And again, just be a liaison for that victim to any services. We'll talk about Dove and New Hope and other domestic violence shelters, legal aspects that these shelters provide, and just the network and support that these services of domestic violence are there for a person that is a victim of abuse. In regards to social services being called, Department of Children and Families, DCF, not every call involves DCF being notified. However, if a child is in the home during an incident of abuse, then we are mandated to report and notify DCF. DCF is not the enemy. They are not there to take away your child. They are there actually to help bring services into the home. People have this fear that if DCF's notified, I'm going to lose custody of my child. Not the case. Very, very, very infrequently does that happen. The only incident that I can think of where that would happen is if the child is at serious risk of abuse in the home by one or both of the parents. Then in those instances, the child will be removed. DCF is there to help bring services into the home, whether it be counseling services for the child that witnessed the abuse, services for both parents or one of the parents, whether it be counseling for the parents. They're there just to make sure that the family dynamic stays intact. Please, if you or someone you know is a victim of domestic violence, don't hesitate to reach out. I promise you, once you contact the men and women here at the Canton Police Department, you will never be alone. We will be there with you, or I personally will be there with you on your journey to try to help bring calm and safety to you and to your family members. The worst thing to do is to suffer in silence. I know it's the hardest thing to do. So just make that phone call. We will be there to help guide you, support you with understanding, compassion, and sensitivity.